Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show, highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyles, community and neighborhood. And now, from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Our house in the middle of our street, our house.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. It's Masters Weekend. It's that time of the year where we are moving full throttle into spring. Springfest is about 3 weeks away, and we're a week away from a very well-known event here in Moore County called the Second Chance Prom. And for those people who have attended in the past, they know we're talking today about the communities and schools in Moore County, which is one of the most important agencies. We always talk on the show about how Moore County provides nets to people of all ages, and nothing is more important than the mentoring and the stewardship of making sure that our middle-aged students pick up the right habits, get to high school, make some good decisions, do the right things, and the Communities and Schools program goes a long way to making that a reality. Our guests today are the Executive Director of Communities and Schools, Brianna Nelson, and you were on, I guess about a year or so ago, and we were talking about CIS. It's a very exciting organization that really does deal with some of the most important ages for students.
You're absolutely right about that, Bill. Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you are right. We deal with students that are ages 6 to 17, and they come into our programs for different reasons. Sometimes they need some assistance academically.
Right.
Sometimes they need assistance socially. Maybe they're struggling with some homework, or they're not getting along with some kids at school. Maybe there's some issues with bullying. So what we do is we intervene in those situations and provide them with mentors that will hopefully guide them into a more positive situation.
What is it about the ages, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, that makes that such an impressionable and scary period for kids in that development stage?
Well, I think they're going through quite a few transitions. They're coming out of the elementary schools,
right,
which are typically smaller schools. They have smaller number of students,
right,
and going into a completely different level of academics. And then they're starting to think about their high school career and also their college career. Mm-hmm. So they have a lot of changes that are going on, and a lot of our students, have a tough time in transitioning mm-hmm. and dealing with all of those changes.
A couple of years ago, I spent a couple of years mentoring a student from the 6th grade to the 8th grade, and I saw a big difference. Today, I have a friendship and a relationship with an 8th grader who's not in the program, but I already see bad habits. I already see an attitude of listlessness, somebody who has sort of thrown in the towel, and it's amazing what the absence of a good mentor can do. But we're also, I want to introduce everybody at the table. Mike Dubbs, who is the pastor at the Community Congregational Church here in Southern Pines, is a mentor in the program. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we want to compare notes a little bit on the experience that mentoring provides. It's a volunteer situation, but a very rewarding one.
That's correct. I've been mentoring for about 6 months now.
Yep.
And Dr. Moore told me I could give a shout out to Noah, who's my mentee, in case he's listening.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I find it's as rewarding for me. I hope it's as rewarding for him as it is for me.
Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about your experiences with Noah today, and you and I can compare notes about our experiences. One of our past guests and one of our favorite guests is Dr. Robin Moore, who is the student support chairperson. Is that?
Student support specialist, Bill.
A specialist. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
It's always good to see you. You've been on in the past, and you've spoken eloquently about all the advantages that having a mentored student provide, not just for the student at the moment in time, but for the community at large.
Well, I feel so good about being able to be affiliated with Communities in Schools.
Right.
It is an organization that is powered by volunteers in the community. And we get volunteers both at the Southern Middle School, where we have the mentoring program. We also have a mentoring program at the Community Learning Center at Pinckney. We also have the Reading Buddies programs at the two primary schools, Aberdeen and Southern Pines. And just to see the interaction between volunteers and students is very heartwarming. And, of course, it's just great to sit around this table. Everyone at this table either has been a mentor or is currently a mentor. So that's just great that we're all together here talking about something that's near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah. Brianna, did you start in the program as a mentor?
I actually started in the program as a mentor coordinator, and then this past year at Southern Middle School, a young girl came to us from Guatemala. She came to live here in North Carolina with her family. She came with her mom and her younger brother. And she did not speak any English, and Mom didn't speak any English. And so she came to Southern Middle School, where we have our mentoring program, and Dr. Moore says to me, man, I wish we had somebody that could reach out and work with this girl. And I happen to be bilingual. Of course, he knew that. So he was kind of poking me and saying, well, you know, it would be really nice if somebody could work with her that speaks Spanish. So I got the hint, and so, of course, now I'm working with her, helping her learn some English and spending some time with her each week and doing some activities with her with the community mentoring program as well. So
Right.
it's really an opportunity, you know, for me to learn more about her and, you know, help her adjust to life here in Moore County. From what I understand, she came from a small school of about 6 students in Guatemala, a very small town, very small school. So imagine coming to Moore County, you know, in America, not speaking the language, and then being in Southern Middle School, which has about 700 students. So to me, that's a tough transition. So I'm just glad I can be there and be a part of that for her.
Yeah, and the fundraiser that you're doing next Saturday on the 16th of April is also an opportunity, yes, to raise funds for the organization, but also to introduce people in the community to CIS.
That's correct. Absolutely. I mean, all of our fundraisers, they support our programming and what we do. It's essential that we fundraise. Fundraising actually provides about 50% of our funding for our programming.
Right.
And so we take the opportunity always to make sure people understand what it is that we do, get them interested in what we do, and most of all, make sure that they understand the impact of what we do. The impact that spending an hour or 45 minutes a week with a child, the impact that can have.
Well, we're gonna talk about some of the success stories and some of the things that people need to hear to personalize it a little bit, because I think it's really important. The event itself, I remember my high school senior prom, and I had to spend, I think, $55 or $60 back in 1971, and I thought I would never in my life recapture that money. I didn't think I was going to marry the person that I went with, and I had to wear a tuxedo. And I remember it being very traumatic for me, and I was earning money as a caddy at the time, but I thought, $60, how can I do this? We all have memories of our prom. Some are happy, some are not. And who came up with the idea of the second chance prom? What's the story behind it?
Well, from my understanding, there's a couple different counties, at least within the CIS network, that do a second chance prom. But Dr. Moore got involved with the CIS of Lee County, or had a conversation with the executive director there, and they have a very successful second chance prom. So we were looking to add another fundraiser to our rotation, and he approached me with the idea and put it together, did some brainstorming, and got it put together. So the first year, last year, was very successful, and we're looking to have an even more successful year this year.
Where's it going to be held?
It's going to be held at Down Memory Lane in Aberdeen.
And it's going to start around 7 o'clock?
There's a social hour from 7 to 8, and then from 8 to 11 we're having live music from the Mike Wallace Quartet.
And you have to be a 21, so I don't get in.
You do.
Okay.
21 or over.
But you're going to have raffle prizes. It's going to be a dancing event.
Yes.
and just a big social event. How many people did you have last year?
We had between 50 and 60 people last year.
Okay.
First year of a fundraiser is always the toughest, getting the word out
Right.
there, getting people interested in it, making sure that they have an experience that they can talk about and remember.
Right.
I've had several people come up to me since the event last year and want to know if we're having it again this year, and of course we are. So there's people that are excited about it, and we're even more excited about it now as we move closer to the event.
And the use of social media does help get your message out more effectively than some of the old traditional methods, huh?
It does. We are fortunate enough to have an office manager who is very skilled and knowledgeable on social media. So she is posting on Facebook and Twitter about all of our events.
Right.
People are sharing the events for us. Of course, that reaches more and more people as they do that.
Right. And ticket prices?
Tickets are $25 per person or $40 per couple. And I do want to make a mention that our volunteers, if they want to attend, will receive 50% off of the ticket prices.
Oh, that's terrific.
So a couple can attend for $20.
Yeah, and this is next Saturday, April the 16th. Even though it's a second annual, it's going to be a fast-growing event. Some of the fundraisers you've done in the past, I've noticed, were right after the first of the year, after the holidays, and sometimes it's harder to get people's attention right after a season of giving, but April is a great, people are renewed, they're moving forward, and they've kind of dusted themselves off and they're ready to go to the next chapter.
That's right. It's springtime. People are looking to get out of the house, looking to do something fun, something different. So the Second Chance Prom is definitely an opportunity for them to do that.
Yeah. How many students do you have right now enrolled in CIS?
I would say anywhere, an exact number I can't really give you, but I would say anywhere between 90 and 100 is typically what we are working with.
And how about the volunteers?
Volunteers, we have, that number has grown within the last couple of years. So I would say we're probably at about 70 volunteers between all of our mentoring programs.
Mike, how did you get connected with CIS? Who reached out to you?
Dr. Moore reached out to me and hit me with that famous line, "You'd be a great mentor."
Right.
And,
Right.
I used to be a big brother in Pennsylvania through United Way, and so I had that experience of a relationship with a kid.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said it, when I heard about the program, I knew it would be worthwhile for me, and hopefully I can be worthwhile enough.
You're from Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir.
Whereabouts?
Bloomsburg?
I know it well. I went to Lafayette College in the Lehigh Valley and spent my summers as a kid in the Pocono Mountains. Used to go to Bloomsburg. How long have you been down here?
I moved down here in 2011.
And what brought you here?
My uncle was career military, and he retired here to be near Fort Bragg.
Okay.
And when he passed, I had his affairs to deal with, and one day it dawned on me coming here, it felt like I was coming home.
Doesn't this area remind you of the areas like in Pennsylvania or New England that you grew up in as a kid?
Somewhat, except without the snow, which is a wonderful plus.
Right, and Bloomsburg, for those who don't know, is right just south of Highway 80, Route 80, and it's not too far from State College. It's east of State College, but you get some pretty hard winters up there.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, well, you made a good choice. What does it mean to you to be a mentor? What do you get? Because there's a satisfaction that's hard to describe.
Well, in my business, I'm constantly telling people that you just can't outgive God, and
Right.
I find that's true here. I try to do this just because it's the right thing to do,
Right.
and walk away mentored too almost every week.
You said something very interesting before. You said you hope that your mentee is getting as much out of this as you are. But can you remember when you were a 6th or 7th grader, can you remember your teachers, who they were?
I do, actually, yeah.
And some of the lessons you learned?
Yeah.
Those impressions are indelible. You don't forget those at that age. Even though it might not always register from the child, right? They do remember it, and they take it with them as they get older.
They do, and I hope that's the case here, too.
My guess is, my very best guess is that it is the case. Is Noah a 6th grader, 7th grader?
6th grader.
Okay. So you might have the chance to see him through the entire middle school curriculum for 3 years.
I hope so.
Yeah. There's an amazing difference. I remember Dr. Moore, who I met as a 6th grader, And by the time he was in 8th grade, he used to walk around the hallways. He was cocky. He would hardly make eye contact in 6th grade, or had very few social skills. By the 8th grade, he was too cool for words. He was having autograph sessions at the corner of some of the hallways. He was waving to his friends. He was showing me off these Celadon-colored bracelets that he bought online, and how cool. He was just too cool for words. I mean, we used to have a photo session. His confidence grew immeasurably over 3 years, and they moved away. But you see that, don't you, that development from 6th to 8th grade?
Oh, absolutely. The kids grow in confidence. And you think about it back when you were in that 6th grade, 7th grade, and if an adult came up to you and said,
right,
you know, that was a good job you did there, or you really look like an athlete, or you got a good grade on that report card, they will see that as just affirmation of who they are, and,
right,
and the growth that you'll see in them is just phenomenal.
Right.
And that's one of the things that just it's so rewarding about being a mentor, is to see the kids, you know, blossom, and that's really what you look for as a mentor coordinator.
Yeah, there were some great stories and pictures I still have of Jake, and so he made an impression on me, and I hope that I made one on him. But there are so many volunteers who do this, and they don't have to have any special qualifications, do they, other than they want to volunteer and help and support the student? Brianna?
I think that's most important, that they want to make a difference in a young person's life.
Right.
They have to have the passion for that.
Right.
Because as you guys are talking about, you know, seeing a change in a child that may, you know, be coming into the situation or into the mentoring relationship already with some challenges, you're not going to see changes right away necessarily. So you
Right.
have to have a passion and patience in
Right.
order to work with the child, to just hopefully, you know, shed some light on their situation and keep working with them.
CNN did a special a couple of months ago on the impact of texting and the social activity that goes on, and how kids get their self-esteem. And sometimes it isn't even eyeball to eyeball anymore like it used to be when we were kids. When we come back in the second set, maybe we can talk a little bit about that as well. We're talking all this show with communities and schools, CIS. It's a great mentoring program, especially for the kids that could possibly be at risk or just need some direction to keep them focused on the straight and narrow. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back.
Our house, it has a crowd. There's always something happening, and it's usually quite loud. Our mum, she's so house proud. In the middle of our street, our house. In the middle of our house, it has a crowd.
Welcome back to the second set of All Things Moore County. We're talking about communities and schools today. In particular, next Saturday, April the 16th, is the second annual Second Chance Prom to be held at the Down Memory Lane in Aberdeen. There'll be music. There'll be a social hour from 7 to 8. Hors d'oeuvres will be served, live music by the Mike Wallace Quartet for people 21 and over. And being that it's a second annual event, it's probably going to be a very large, growing event. It's also one of the chief fundraisers that communities and schools puts on. And so many agencies in Moore County who have a need to be and a right to be have to sometimes think outside the box when it comes to fundraising. There's so many good organizations, but we have spoken so many times on the show about how important it is to provide nets for the kids who are developing and growing, and then hopefully become tax-paying citizens, people who are responsible, who are ready to go to high school and then beyond. And Robin, we were reminiscing a little bit about the value of a mentor, a good mentor who can volunteer, and you've indicated that you've seen so many kids improve with their confidence and their focus, but there are kids that get left behind.
That's true, and one of the things I think it's important to point out is that these are not necessarily kids that are just deficient academically. That many times kids come to middle school and maybe they just simply don't fit in.
Right.
They sit in the cafeteria by themselves. Mm-hmm. We have one young lady she's 12 going on 45. She's just very mature for her age, and she just doesn't fit in with her classmates. So the mentor in that case just simply gives that young lady someone to talk with, kind of on the same intellectual level. And so we have that. Every student is different. Every student has a different set of needs. And my role as the student support specialist is to make that link between the mentor and the mentee. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I interview the students. I also interview the mentors. And I try to find who's going to be a good match. It's like one of those television shows.
Like the dating game.
Yeah, the dating game. And I always love to tell one story that we had a young lady that was wanting to be a mentor, and so when I had matched everyone up, there was one young man left, and he loved football. And so I talked to him. I said, look, you will like Kathy. She's a great person. You and she will get along famously. He says, Dr. Moore, you know she won't know anything about football because I'm all about football.
Right.
So I said, well, just give her a chance. So anyway, when we walked in, introduced him, and you could tell this young man just wasn't all that interested. And so I said, well, AJ, tell Miss Kathy what you're interested in. He says, I'm interested in football. That's what I like to do. I bet you don't know anything about football, do you? She looked at him straight in the eye, and she says, my dad was a Green Bay Packer.
Oh, gosh.
And I didn't even know that. That was just one of those serendipitous moments. But anyway, they became best buddies after that. And, he went through elementary school, middle school, did really well, ended up playing football at Pinecrest, and he's on now playing college football.
For the people that volunteer to be mentors, you always told a very compelling story about trying to put ourselves into the heads of a 6th or 7th or 8th grader about their dreams and how they quantify it. What does that look like to a student, and how do they get it developed? And that's one of the features that the program seems to offer.
Right. We always start out with dreams. That's the first question I ask a student when they have been referred to the program, and I ask them what their dreams are. And I've yet to find a middle school student who doesn't have a dream.
Right.
Now, I will tell you, by the time they get to high school, sometimes those dreams have disappeared. And so what we do is we sort of we get the student to buy into the idea that we're there to help them work towards their dream. And I give them the analogy, it's like a vacation, that if you identify where your location that you want to, or your destination, it's just a matter, the mentor is there to help you get on the path to making sure that trip occurs and you reach the destination you want to reach.
So when the kids get to high school, what happens to their dreams? Where do they go?
I think in many instances they get stepped on. A lot of our little boys are 60 pounds. They're 4 feet 6 inches tall, and they want to be a professional football player. And so, people make fun of them. They say, you'll never be in the NFL. You're too short. You're too slow.
Right.
You don't weigh enough. And so then their dream gets crushed. In some instances, the kids talk themselves out of their dream. They want to go to college. They want to be a doctor. Well, all of a sudden, middle school is a little more difficult. So they end up making some C's or some D's, and then they talk themselves out of going to medical school because they say, I'm not smart enough. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to be there with them to say, well, in order to be a doctor, you do have to pay the price. It's not, you can't just wish your way into being an MD. Mm-hmm. That you have to do certain things in order for that to happen. Now, some of the kids will decide, well, that's really too much work. I didn't really realize I had to go to college for 8 years and then do residency.
Right.
So what we do, we change the dream. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden they may not want to be an MD, but maybe they want to be an X-ray technician or something else in the medical field.
Right.
And so then that's fine. We just seamlessly change the path and say, well, let's explore that particular option and see what you're going to have to do in order to make that happen in your life.
Is it safe to say that the net result of a good mentor-mentee situation would be an increased self-esteem by the mentee as they grow older from 6th to 8th grade?
I think it is. And one of the things the mentor that Mike and Brianna and that you did when you were a mentor is that is to basically give them kind of the unconditional support that, I'm going to care for you regardless of what you do.
Right.
But you've got to understand, if you've got a plan,
Right.
then, and if you don't follow the plan, then natural consequences will take place. If you want to be a doctor but you don't study, then you're not going to make the grades to be able to get into college, so that dream is just going to evaporate. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of that you have a balance of unconditional positive regard, but by the same time you got to be an accountability buddy. Mm-hmm. And you say, look, what you're doing is not working, and they need to hear that from somebody, and they will only listen to someone that they really believe cares about them.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that?
Brianna, please do.
One of the things that we stress to our mentors is that you don't want your mentee to become dependent on you. You want actually the opposite effect. You want to build a relationship with them, but in the end, you want to help them build the skills that they need to be independent,
right,
and build self-efficacy.
Right.
And so one of the things that some of our mentors struggle with as they come close to terminating the relationship, or if the student is getting those straight A's and they're doing well socially or academically, into where the mentor might be able to step out, the mentor sometimes feel, well, they don't need me anymore. That's really where you want them to be. And so there's kind of a grief cycle that some of our mentors go through. And so we try to teach them that you did your job. That's what you were supposed to do.
Right. There are so many pressures today on middle school kids, and I mentioned earlier the CNN show that they did with the kids and all their cell phones, and the texting, and the groups, and the bullying that you mentioned in the first segment. That has changed the way people feel about them, kids feel about themselves today from 10 or 15 years ago, hasn't it?
It has, and it's with social media,
yeah,
the effects of cyberbullying, social bullying, they run rampant. I mean, one post on Facebook, and in the old days, back when we were in school, it would take maybe a day or two for rumors to get around. Now it's around in seconds,
right,
instantly. People can spread, horrible things about students, and there's a lot of studies and research that's being done and has been done that shows the effects, the immediate effects on the children, but also as they get older, as young adults, that these bullying instances can still have on them.
They interviewed a couple of the parents on CNN, and the parents were amazed to realize that their kids were accessing their phone during the course of a school day between 90 and 100 times a day.
Wow.
That's 90 or 100 times they could get positive or negative reinforcement. So a kid could be walking from one class to the next, and walking down the hall, which should just be a typical exercise, their self-esteem could go up and down. There's a lot of pressure.
That's right. There absolutely is. And, that's why it's so important to have, positive role models in someone's life, especially, if a child is, maybe a victim of bullying in such a capacity.
A couple of years ago, I have to share a story, and I will never forget this as long as I live. I was standing in the hall. School classes were changing, and there was a rush down the main hall off the principal's office, and I was waiting for Jake. And I saw this very heavy girl walking by herself amidst a bunch of people in groups, and another girl went up to her and hit her, and she dropped all her books to the ground. And I got the impression from watching her pick her books up, it was like an automatic response, like this was not the first time this had happened. And she picked them up, and I wanted to cry for her. And I went over to her and I said, can I help you? And she looked at me, she was afraid. No. In other words, get away from me, don't talk to me. She picked her books up and she scurried right on off to class. And the kid that kind of tripped her up was a little bit of a bully herself. But I have a feeling that girl went home that day and didn't say a thing to her mom or her dad because she was used to it. And she had a weight problem, and she was being poked fun at. And I remember I almost had a tear in my eye for her because you couldn't reach out. You remember how bad it was. You see that kind of stuff, and it breaks your heart. But she wouldn't share it. Kids keep things to themselves sometimes.
They do. Sometimes they're embarrassed to
Yeah.
say anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already, if they're being bullied or picked on at school, all
Yeah.
the kids, if there's a weight issue, that's something visual that people can see, and so they're already self-conscious about that, and then maybe they're just not sure how to bring it up to their parents, or maybe they're not comfortable enough sharing that with their parents. Maybe their parents won't believe them, or the parents won't support them. And sometimes there's a fear of going to an authority figure.
Right.
So maybe they won't bring it up to someone at school administration.
Right.
So there's many different reasons, why they may be, afraid or just find it difficult to ask for help in those situations.
In your program, you have students that come from a two-parent family. You have students that come from a one-parent family. It's not one way or the other, is it?
No, we get referrals for children that come from all different kinds of backgrounds.
Right.
And there is not, one identifier that, causes kids to be referred to our program. So we, especially in this area, we have a lot of military families, so maybe the dad is absent a lot, so the mom or the child is just looking for that male role model in their life. We do, work with children that have a lot of challenges at home. Maybe there's an incarcerated parent, or maybe it's a single-parent home where the mom or the dad is working quite often, and so they're left alone a lot. So we get referrals based off a lot of different characteristics.
Yeah. Mike, I have to ask you a question as a mentor. What is it about going in and sharing with a child, a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader, that kind of gets you outside of yourself that becomes a very beneficial experience?
I think it's just the changes week to week. The first week or two I was there, we just kind of did generic things to get to know each other, and now one of his goals, he wants to go play lacrosse sometime. He wants to try lacrosse. And so one of these weeks we're going to just go play lacrosse. He's one of the kids Robin talked about, wants to be an NFL football player, so sometimes we just play catch with the football and talk about what's going on. But this last week, he brought homework. He brought some homework to the session, which was really neat. That he knows I'm concerned about his grades. He knows I've gotten to meet his teachers, and I think it's neat that the teachers make that connection, and then also the child makes the connection that, okay, in addition to maybe hiding this from mom, now there's somebody here at the school that if I have something wrong, that somebody's going to know about it. So I think it's the most fascinating part to me is just the growth week to week.
Yeah, and some of the mentors can go in, and I remember all of a sudden my problems, my day-to-day issues became so unimportant, because in the child's universe, how kids are so, I can't think of the word, but their whole world is just around their little zip code, and they don't know anything else, and we can kind of simplify it and dial it down a little bit and stop ruminating about our own issues when you're getting in to share with somebody else, especially a young child.
That's very true.
Yeah. We're going to come back in the third set. We're talking all about communities and schools. This is All Things Moore County.
Nothing ever slows her down, and a mess is not allowed. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house. It has a crown.
Welcome back to our final set with communities and schools, and next Saturday's important fundraiser, the Second Chance Prom, being held at the Down Memory Lane in Aberdeen, starting at 7 o'clock that evening. It's an important fundraiser. There'll be music, there'll be dancing, raffle prizes. Tickets, by the way, can be purchased online at cismore.org, or you can call the community and school staff at 910-295-1072. We're talking with Brianna, the executive director, Brianna Nelson, Mike Dubbs, who is a mentor and a pastor at the Community Congregation Church, and Dr. Robert Moore, who is a student support specialist. the nitty-gritty of communities and schools is not just mentoring, which we have been focusing on, but it's a much broader scope than that, isn't it?
That's right. And here in Moore County, the focus for CIS has been with mentoring. But what CIS, from a national standpoint and also from the state office standpoint, what they've really done over the past couple of years is really rein in what CIS affiliates have done in the past. CIS affiliates may have had clothing closets, or they may have had food banks. But what we're really doing is getting to the core of what CIS does, and that is placing student support specialists like Dr. Moore within the school setting to work with and identify students that are in need of some additional assistance. And what they've done to help the affiliates do that is introduce a framework called the ABC plus P. So every intervention that we provide is based off of attendance, behavior, coursework, or parent engagement, the ABC plus P.
Right.
And so, of course, that involves engaging the entire child or working with the entire child, which includes the family. So CIS of Moore County does a really good job with not only working with the child themselves, but also with the parent. So we have different programs in which we provide supports to the children and their family. And one of the supports is the in-school mentoring. Another program that we have is community mentoring. So outside of the in-school mentoring, a volunteer may choose to work with a child in the community to where they're exposing them to different experiences, such as taking them to museums or going for nature walks with them, or just spending time with them developing life skills. I've had some mentors that have taken their mentees to the grocery store to teach them how to comparison shop. I've had mentors where they've had a mentee that really didn't know how to look people in the eye or know how to shake a hand, so we taught them how to give a firm handshake and look people in the eye. So it just, again, it's really devised on an individual basis. Whatever that child needs is what we will have the mentors work with them to do.
There's something about a mentor, just by being there and setting an example of who that mentor is, what kind of person, and that alone creates impressions in a child, whether or not it might come out. And as long as they can see consistency, that's an important role. Sometimes the mentors, Robin, feel like they have to do too much.
They do. I think a lot of times, particularly working with middle school kids, if you have middle schoolers of your own, you know what kind of conversation or what a challenge it is to converse with a middle schooler. Typically, they come home. How was school? Fine. What did you do today? Nothing.
Right.
Do you have any homework? Nah.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's really hard. And I think a lot of times mentors say, well, what am I going to do to converse with this person for 45 minutes, which is how long the average time is with a mentor. And so it is, I think what happens is that they quickly find, though, that through some efforts, and we do a little bit of training to prepare the mentors to ask open-ended questions, to just not worry if the person doesn't open up to you right away, that those are the kind of things that, are probably something that people will get used to if they decide to become a mentor.
Yeah. So the volunteers that come in to mentor, they do go through some training.
That's correct.
As well. Can you talk a little bit about the training, what's required of the volunteers?
Well, depending upon what position they go into, community mentor training is different from in-school training, but they go through a CIS training that tells them all about CIS, what's expected of them, and then the coordinators will give them specific training according to, again, what program they're going into. And then they receive additional training throughout their mentorship, ongoing in-services, just extra support that they may need.
Mm-hmm. I remember the movie Pay It Forward. I'm sure you saw a big smile on your face. And Kevin Spacey was the role model. The Joel Osment, I guess the character that he played, and they touched each other in their relationship. And but that's a kind of satisfaction that you can get to any person out there who has some free time, who wants to give back. And it is just giving back, too, at the same time. Taking your experience, Mike. Do you have children, by the way?
Yes, I have 2 children.
What ages?
They're older. They're adults, mid-20s.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, that's a compliment to you.
Well, thanks.
You have kids in your 20s, huh? But just giving back, there's a satisfaction in doing that, and letting people see what you know and try to teach them and show them a way. Because you remember when people mentored you as a child.
Absolutely, and that's one of the fears going in, is whether or not you have the enough knowledge to impart to be a good mentor, but the most important thing is just the time.
Yeah, and being
willing.
And being willing.
And consistent, too. As you mentioned earlier, that's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Just knowing that they can depend on seeing you each week, I think, is enough. I mean, when I first started mentoring, seeing, my mentee's face just light up, did a lot for me, and that, reinforced me being there, and that she really looks forward to me being there. And I've seen it with different mentors as, they walk into the office. I see their mentee's face light up. I mean, they're there. They're ready for the mentor to be there. So being consistent is absolutely important.
Have you ever presented to the Pinehurst Newcomers Club?
I have not.
You need to. There's some really, really good people it's a social group of people who move here to Moore County. You don't have to be in Pinehurst per se. Monica Converse is the one of the conduits over there. They have all different sorts of activities of a social nature, of a cultural nature. And what they get are a lot of young retirees, retired people who come in and who are living here from different parts of the country, and they all network. And they're very bright and smart and social. And I bet you that would, and they have different speakers from time to time, and I have a feeling you would be. Oh, you know who is a member of there? As Tina Arno.
She's a board member of ours.
Tina, Tina, I introduced her to Robin, I believe, and so here I thought I was doing a favor. She has sort of like quadrupled whatever I did, and she has become very proactive, and she's a very active member of the newcomers as well. I bet you, I'm surprised she hasn't talked to you about that.
Well, she has talked to me about that, but that's definitely an avenue I want to revisit with her.
Okay. And you have a Facebook page that people can go to?
We do. Communities and Schools of Moore County is our Facebook page.
Okay. So you have the social media angle as well?
Absolutely.
Are we going to see some nice pictures of the Second Chance Prom on Facebook right after the event?
Last year I was posting them during the event.
Okay.
So I'll do the same this year too. And then definitely afterwards we'll have some pictures up there.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier about this 8th grader, this friend. He's a great young man. He has a great work ethic when he's away from his family. And he's worked for a couple of handymans that I know, and they all say about him, I mean, he's just got a great work ethic, and he doesn't stop. But he says, he doesn't get good grades. He's not motivated. He's shadowed by an older sister who's a straight A student, and he just says, who cares? I'm just going to go into the military. And I said to him, have you looked at some of the people who are in the military? They have more discipline and more good judgment. You don't just do that as like a fallback. And he shrugs his shoulders. And it's hard to sometimes reach him. You'd like to think that you're getting through, but it's not tangible. You don't see results. Maybe it's a few years later, huh?
I think so.
Very frustrating.
And one of the things that we try to do also is to try to make sure that the kids come to middle school with a good educational foundation, and that's why we have developed the Reading Buddies program at the 2 primary schools.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that.
And pretty much what we do, for those volunteers who maybe are a little bit intimidated by working with middle schoolers, they may want to work with a 2nd grader or even a 1st grader. And we do that at Aberdeen and Southern Pines primary schools. And pretty much what a Reading Buddy does is they just spend time, 45 minutes a week, just like the mentors. They go into the classroom, and then they are pretty much told which student to work with, and usually those are kids who are struggling a little bit with their reading, but we know that if we're going to ensure the student is successful in school, they've got to have good reading skills.
Right. And
one of the best things to do is to allow children to read to someone so that they are corrected, but also just that experience of reading. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we've done with the Reading Buddies program is that through Linden Lodge, we've even got stuffed animals. And so we tell the student if they go home and they don't have time to read to their parents or a sibling, they can carry a bear home and read to their bear. So they have reading bears. And, of course, we receive those through Linden Lodge, a wonderful donation through that organization. To further supplement that program, we received a grant last year through the Randolph Electrical Membership Corporation to build little schoolhouses. And we already have 2 that are up and running, one at Texas Roadhouse, and they've been a wonderful sponsor for the program. And we also we're moving the Little Red Schoolhouses through area churches. And my church, Southern Pines United Methodist Church, has hosted a Little Red Schoolhouse for this month, and we're moving it over to Pinehurst in April. And so that basically people can donate their gently used children's books, and then we in turn give those books to the children at the 2 primary schools in the Reading Buddies program so they can have books to carry home.
Great. That's great. So you have more than just the middle school mentor situation. You've got the reading program.
Right. We have the Reading Buddies, so we have volunteers, and a lot of the mentors who say, well, I'm a little bit intimidated by older kids. They will love being a reading buddy because the little first and second graders will hug them, and it makes their day to see these volunteers come into the classroom.
The Second Chance Prom that's going to happen next Saturday on the 16th of April is an important fundraiser, but it's not the only fundraising activity that you have planned for 2016, is it?
No, it's not. We have 3 more coming up this year, and we have our 20th anniversary for our golf tournament. So It's a big year for our golf tournament this year. So Davis Clark and Bob Rigsby are working with us to make that bigger and better than ever, and that's coming up on August 13th, and it's being held at Longleaf Golf and Family Club.
Yeah.
We also have the Run for the Buddies, which is coming up on May 7th.
Right.
And, of course, that's our 1K fun run and a 5K run starting at 8:30. The race starts and ends at New Century Middle School. And there will be an award ceremony following the race. And, as usual, we have Stuff the Bus this year on July 22nd, 23rd, and 24th.
Yep, a lot of people know all about Stuff the Bus.
Yes, we do. And each year last year we've raised over $13,000 in supplies. And so we divide those supplies up amongst all 23 Moore County schools.
We're at a time in Moore County where our demographics are changing, and we're getting a lot of young families with kids. We just came through a voting on the 15th of March on a lot of issues, and one of the most important issues that was on the table had to do with the quarter-cent sales tax for schools. There are a lot of people in the community who are talking a lot about the school system, improving the school system, providing the nets for the kids. So I think that there's a perfect storm brewing that I also think, Robin, they're going to try to put that quarter-cent sales tax back on the ballot in November, from what I understand. And we've had a couple of the candidates who came in to speak, and they were, in particular, John Zumwalt, and he did a great job talking about the schools, the situations. So there's so much focus on the kids, and it's not a coincidence that you're here right now. The timing, couldn't be better.
Yeah, in regards to the sales tax increase, there's overcrowding in the schools, which places an extra burden on our principals and on our teachers.
Yes.
And so they're relying more and more on organizations, that can provide support to them, such as, communities and schools and us doing Stuff the Bus.
Right. One of the things that makes Moore County such a great place to live is that the citizens are very giving. You're a United Way agency as well. You're
Yes.
under their umbrella.
Yes.
And they're one of your, big contributors.
One of our biggest contributors every year.
They do a great job, and it's no surprise that you are. I have to very quickly, if people want to read more about communities and schools, if they want to volunteer, can you give us some contact information where people can go, either online or via phone?
Absolutely. They can visit our website at cismoore.org, that's cismoore.org, or they can call our office at 910-295-1072.
And they can also go on Facebook and just read about the events that you have coming up, plus the fundraisers.
Absolutely.
All right. Brianna, Thank you. Brianna Nelson, the Executive Director of Communities and Schools. Wish you the very best of luck with your fundraiser next week. I have a
Thank you.
feeling it'll be a great success. Mike Dubbs, good luck with Noah. I think he's a very lucky guy to have you there, and you've got the right disposition, I can tell.
Well, thank you. I'm the lucky one, though.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. Well said. And Dr. Robin Moore, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and you are welcome to come in anytime. You can talk about anything. You have that talent. Very interesting guy. Communities and Schools is one of the most important agencies in Moore County. It provides our youngest citizens the guidance that they need to become more responsible adults and well-adjusted young adults. This is All Things Moore County. Have a great week. Thank you.
They're going to miss in lots of ways.